I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. And as you came in, hopefully you noticed that we've got bios, a little packet of bios of all the candidates. And we also have a copy of the article that the Battle Creek Inquirer did where they asked the candidates questions and allowed them to answer. And since the Inquirer did that, what I'm not going to do is ask the same questions that the Inquirer asked, because they've made their positions clear. They were talking about things like general questions about funding, quality, equity, safety, mental health, and so that gives us a chance to cover more here tonight. So I wanted to let you know that. And there is a basket back there if you have a question that I don't get to. And if we have time tonight, and I don't want to go longer than 2 hours because I super appreciate everybody coming out. We'll get to audience questions if we have a chance, if the time allows. And which is enough time for these young men and women to be on the hot seat. Oh, thanks. And again, I want to thank Sharon Ziebel back there. I'd like to give her a round of applause. Sharon. Because even though I get to ask the questions, and I'll introduce myself in a second, Sharon's the one that communicated all the publicity, prepared all the bios, contacted the media, contacted all the local organization leaders, on top of her already full-time job as executive secretary to the superintendent. So she's a busy young lady. And the flowers back there for Sharon. So thank you very much, Sharon. And Mike Rio, our technology teacher at the high school, is filming this event. And so if you have friends or neighbors that weren't able to be here tonight, it's going to be on Access Vision several times.
And our YouTube channel. We have a Harper Creek High School HCTV YouTube channel.
There you go, technology.
We'll put links on our Facebook page and so forth.
So that'll be great in case someone needs to know, if they're interested, please help communicate that to them. And again, my name is Deborah Look. I am a retired teacher here at Harper Creek High School. Okay, got hired about 40 years ago. I'm very young, as you can tell. And I was a former association leader here, so when I was in that role, I used to do these Meet the Candidates night, but the past several elections we haven't had contests. Now we have from contests, we've got all this interest. So we wanted to do this for the community. And so just to let the panel know, and all of you know, is that I'll be asking 10 different questions, and they'll each have 2 minutes to answer. And that's longer than you might think. And we have a timekeeper in the front here. This is Rachel Foreman here. She's our current association leader. And she has a little red circle. So the panel, when she puts that circle up, that means you have 30 seconds. It's very high tech, you'll see there. And just like on TV. And then you'll know to kind of wrap up your thought. And obviously you don't have to use the full 2 minutes. That's all right. But just so you know that we are keeping everybody to kind of keeping it all to be fair in the same amount of time. There are 5 candidates for the 2 open positions, but you notice we only have 4 candidates here tonight. Roger King had a last-minute job-related conflict and could not be here tonight, but his information is in the little bio packet, and also his answers to the questions from the Inquirer are there for you. And what we'll be doing is, as we ask each question, we will be rotating the answer, so no panelist will have to be first all the time, like Dr. Borders doesn't have to always go first. And we'll rotate it so to make it fair that way. The topics of the questions have been collected from school employees, administrators, even students. I think the board will be interested in what the students are concerned about. But the questions have been written just by me and no one has seen them before this evening. And I would like to ask all of you to please silence your cell phones because it's hard enough to focus, and I'd hate for somebody to speak. I see Rob reaching for his. And that'll help keep our candidates from being distracted. So if everybody understands the process, the first question is going to go to Dr. Borders, and we'll just go in order on this first question, is that Mrs. Ziebel asked all of you to prepare an opening statement, which I'd like for you to share with us.
Good evening. I'm Dale Borders. I have, along with my wife, been a resident of Harper Creek Schools for over 40 years now, so I'm a young 42. We have 4 children, all of which attended Harper Creek Schools. We've been active in Harper Creek Schools from 1986 until 2011, so about 25 years. Both my wife and I were very active with the band boosters. 3 of our 4 children were very busy in band, and so we spent 16 years as band booster parents. All of the appropriate board positions covered multiple times over the years. Since our last child graduated in 2011, we have been still supporting the fine arts at Harper Creek through our work with the theater department. So we've been busy with that as well. I've been a practicing veterinarian for almost 45 years. I currently am a house call veterinarian, have had that practice now for 7 years, and I've taught at Grand Valley State University for almost 10 years as a full-time professor, so that kept me very busy, but I got tired of driving back and forth. That's a long drive up to Grand Rapids, so I retired from there after almost 10 years. I met and taught over 3,000 students in that 10-year period, so I have a pretty wide experience of college-age students, as well as all my work with the students here at Harper Creek. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Lisa Hubbard.
I am Lisa Hubbard. I currently serve on Harper Creek's Board of Education, and it's been a privilege and honor to hold this position. I believe that society is changing and families are changing, and school needs to change as well, the way we do school, and it's exciting and it's a little bit scary at the same time, but I believe as a board member and as an educator in the community that it's our job to educate, empower, equip, you know, the students of our community and specifically Harper Creek, but and to do what we can to empower the teachers that teach them and serve them, and to empower the families that live with them and care for the kids in their homes. So it's been my privilege to help do that currently, and hopefully to continue to do that in the years to come.
Great, thank you. Tina McNeil.
First of all, Tina McNeil. I've lived in the district for probably 14 years now. My husband graduated, and you all have my biography. So, and we'll also have an opportunity to ask questions here very soon. But I wanted to share a little bit of my experience in school and what I remember. I remember my mom taking pictures the first day of school, as you all probably have as well. I remember a hi that I received from a lot of teachers with my name already on my desk. I remember attending school activities with friends, and also having the support from the community when the high school basketball team, when my basketball team, we all went to state. So one of the things that I say that I took for granted was that my paper was always graded and handed back the next day. That also that my coach had to find a way to also practice and teach me before 5 o'clock many times and figure out a way around that. So what I just challenge you is to think back about when you were in school, and most of you have spent like 35 plus hours a week in the school, and you couldn't do it without your family, taxpayer support, students, administration, teachers, coaches, lunch staff, recess workers, bus drivers, or facilities. In our school system today, it's these people who make the school function day to day. As a taxpaying citizen of this district, I feel it's my responsibility to be sure that this school is fiscally responsible, all while educating our students. We want to invest in our students so that they can stay in our community and help it for the future.
Okay, thanks. Jason Smith.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to answer a few questions, share a few things about myself. To the earlier point, you obviously have my bio, and one of the primary reasons that I was compelled to seek election to the school board was primarily, I've spent the bulk of my career across many areas of the United States and even globally, and taking young people that transition into the workplace, and then trying to take those young people and actually help them be successful, when in turn obviously helping others be successful. And first and foremost, the world's changed. So I think to some of the earlier points, the world that I grew up in and some of the memories I have in high school, or elementary school, and I guess coincidentally I'm married to a vice principal, and I spent a little time with the vice principal when I was in high school. But it was a little different situation. But with that said, I think there's some things from a diversity standpoint based on my experiences that I would like to maybe help drive some change. So obviously you can't boil the ocean, so I thought I would start here, which I've lived in Michigan 10 years. It's been the longest place outside of Tennessee growing up I've ever lived. It's been a great place to live. I'd like to stay here. So I thought I would start seeing if I could drive some positive change here at home.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. Lisa, you'll be going first this time. I'm sure all of you have seen reports in the media about teacher shortages all over the country. How can Harper Creek attract and then retain high-quality teaching staff?
There is a teacher shortage. There's a substitute teacher shortage. There's a lot of shortages, but I believe that by offering, by taking care of the staff that we currently have, which I do think our administration is trying very hard to do that, and then also bringing in, they're not guest teachers, student teachers, and internships, and it being attracting to those so that when they come in and they've done their internship here, that they're happy and excited to stay. Bringing them in and having them be a part of the community and taking care of them like we would take care of one of our own would definitely help that for Harper Creek.
Okay. Thanks, Tina.
I think it's important to make sure they can associate with friends and relatives or things like that within the area with our current teachers, and also the teachers that are currently graduating. We need to really reach out to those who are who want to do internships. We need to do the reach out first. We can't wait for the students to graduate. I think that's one of the key things, is if we are not reaching out, I would say our school is behind the 8 ball on that. We have begun to do that. Rob has reached out with some of the schools early enough so that we can begin to look at some of the interns. But I feel that it's important for people to feel that they're a part of a family. I think that the teachers here, or I know that the teachers here feel like they are a part of a family whenever they come to school every day. And I think it's important for the interns to do the same.
Thanks. Jason?
So relative to recruitment and retention, it's not just a problem in the education system, first and foremost. There's more jobs open today than there's people to fill those jobs. And the ones you get oftentimes aren't the best. So it's not just an issue in the education system. You know, going back to the education system, you know, the key to recruitment and retention is, one, have a compelling reason for someone to join. Okay? Teaching is a calling. I've taught at the collegiate level from an adjunct perspective. Teaching adult learners versus what you know, K through 12 face, very different challenges. So finding someone that's compelled to engage in that type of employment is, I think, primarily you have to find the right person. Once you have the right person, the key is retaining them. So, you know, the cultural aspect, the community support, you know, one would argue, and statistics show, that people don't leave jobs, they leave supervisors or bosses. I mean, in industry, that's what the data shows. You know, I think it's quite different in the education system, okay, because fundamentally people are, in my view, and my mother taught for 40 years in special education, and so I know that's a calling. But I also know the reasons that she decided to retire. And it had little to do with the changing dynamics that were relative to that district. So in my view, I think it's creating the right culture, going out and recruiting early, and then retaining those from a cultural aspect by ensuring they're ingrained in the community.
Okay, thanks. Dale?
Well, I would have to agree with Jason on that subject. I think the community is extremely important to anyone who is working in any kind of a job, and I think that's true of education as well. They have to be welcomed to the community. They have to feel like they're part of the community. As far as how do you get the right teachers, you have to go out and look for them. Okay, well, I agree, we have to go out and actively search for good quality teachers in good educational programs, not only in Michigan, but outside of Michigan as well. You know, there are good education schools, there are schools that are not as good, and I think we need to actively search out those people that are going to become good teachers. Teaching is a calling. You know, I taught at the collegiate level for 10 years as a full-time professor. I don't think I could teach K-12. It's a whole different world. And, you know, I had enough trouble with college students, much less, you know, younger ones. So I think we have to find a way to find the very best teachers, the ones that really want to teach, not that they're just doing it for a job. And once we find them, try and retain them any way we can, whether that's more money, benefits, community, whichever way.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks for those responses. Now with Tina, you'll be going first. Most of your answers to a question from the Inquirer talked about the need for adequate funding from Lansing. Specifically, how will you communicate your concerns about financing education to the legislatures in our state capital?
I would say this is one of the things, I was appointed in the last year to this board, and that's one of the things that I'd say that we need to improve on the board. And I've talked to Sharon about it, I think twice so far, in relation to how as a board member, we can become a lot more involved in the day-to-day activities and the elections. I don't feel that we have that specific representation, and my hope is that we can begin to do that and develop that representation from our school so that we are able to voice our opinions and have our elected officials hear what's going on in our district. I think that that is very important today.
Jason.
So from a funding perspective, so money comes up in all over the world, at home, everywhere. So I'll attack the question maybe from a different angle. At the end of the day, the legislatures are not going to create more money, number one. That comes from the taxpayers, okay? So primarily, if more money is needed, then there has to be an increase in the tax base. You want to increase the tax base, then ensure that the foundational level from an educational perspective are positioning the young people to go out and actually drive that tax base. I guess would be my first view. My second view is you're only going to get so much. And I can tell you, it's never enough. I've never had anyone that I've given a budget to, or even a household budget, that there's not, I need more. So the key is you've got to get creative. And you've got to look at things and set your priorities, focusing on the primary interest is ensuring that we're educating tomorrow's leaders, and then stepping back and understanding, hey, you're probably going to have to make some very tough choices, and in some cases very unpopular choices. But if you keep your primary values in focus, you'll be able to prioritize and make those other choices and hopefully create some what I like to call wiggle room in your budget to allow for some other things.
Okay, thanks. Dale.
I think dealing with the legislature on funding of education has been a real problem over the last few years, and I would like to see more organization through the different school boards coming together and actually, you know, lobbying as a group. I think anytime you can get a group of people together that have a common goal, and you get more results when you can present as a group rather than as an individual. So I'd like to see more activity through the state school board system and become active in that to lobby the legislature for more money for education.
Okay, thanks. And Lisa.
So your question was specifically how will you communicate funding things and with Lansing and our legislators. So I feel like creating and maintaining that strong relationship with our lawmakers and our senators and whatnot is definitely very important. And then like what Dr. Borders said, coming together as a community and as a group and finding a way to have a cohesive voice when we need to ask questions, or we need to help understand, or when we need to take information to our lawmakers, because if we're realistic, there's not teachers sitting at those desks making the laws and deciding how to allocate the funds. And that doesn't mean that they don't want to, that they're intentionally taking money away from education. I think sometimes it just means that they don't understand. And so to have educators at the table, or to have school board members that have a really good relationship with the educators in their community, so they can take that information and bring some clarity to it, and to see how the different laws that are created in our state affect us at a local level and in our schools is very, very important. And I think doing that with all the local school boards, and also I would like to point to the study that was done, the School Finance Research Collaborative, that points out that every school district is different. Every school district needs different types of fundings. Every student need is different. The amount of money that special education students need versus just somebody that's going down a regular path, or even, what's it called? Like when you're seeking a trade route, you know, the different types of fundings that are needed for everyone is different, and it's not just here's your chunk of money that covers anything you need. So helping our legislators understand that.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, well, now that we've got all the finances worked out, and we're going to start with you with Jason, to rather go from Lansing, let's get back to Harper Creek. What do you see as the main priority here at Harper Creek in these two areas? Our facilities, and then in our educational matters. So facilities, and then the educational. Two main priorities.
So relative to the facilities, I guess, given I've built several facilities around the world a number of times and dealt with the infrastructure, I would first say I'd need more data to really make an educated determination on what your facility needs are. Given that there's a proposal that's been made, again, I've set a cooling tower or two over the years. So fundamentally, I would have some questions around, you know, kind of what the issue is relative to that, and then able to step back and kind of understand, hey, what's needed in terms of cooling, okay? Because it fundamentally works differently than an HVAC system. But again, I don't have all the data to, I guess, appropriately ascertain what the facility needs are. From an educational standpoint, I guess I would point out that I think Harper Creek has had a long history of success. So, you know, primarily I would like to ensure that that success is continued as the world continues to change. The world's changed dramatically over the last 20 years. Matter of fact, it's changed since 2008. That reset things, we're on a global platform. And from what I see is we have young people that are moving through the educational system, and they're not appropriately equipped to be competitive, not only locally, but globally. So from an educational standpoint, you know, I would like to see more focus on, you know, science, technology, math, the trades. That is going to be a key opportunity for young people that may choose a different path than maybe taking a 4-year collegiate route.
Okay, great, thanks. Dan?
First, facilities. Certainly we have done a great deal of reorganization and building in Harper Creek in the last few years. The high school is now 13 years old, I think, and we have problems with the high school, and we have had problems with the high school ever since it was built. So there's got to be a way to make the facilities that we have work properly within a financially, fiscally responsible way, okay? Educationally, again, you know, we've been exposed to Harper Creek education for 30 years now. It's changed a great deal. I think education in general has changed a great deal. I know that the students that I taught at Grand Valley, a lot of them came from similar educational experiences as Harper Creek, smaller smaller school systems, things like that. And a lot of those students probably shouldn't have been in college. They weren't prepared to be in college. And I think there's a lot of that here in Harper Creek as well. I think we can do better preparing our students not only for college, but for other areas as well. I don't think everybody needs to go to college. I think that's a fallacy. It's something that we all believed 30 years ago, perhaps, but I don't think it's true any longer. We need people that are technical. We need tradespeople. We do need college-educated people, but not everybody needs to or should go to college.
Great, thanks. Lisa?
I think for both facilities and educational needs, I think we need to take care of what we have and to plan for the future. So building-wise, we take care of what we have and make sure that whatever we build or whatever we fix or whatever we modify, that we're forward-thinking and that it's something that will change along, or that will suit the needs of our community and our students in the changing educational environment. And then, you know, the same thing with educational priorities. We should take care of the kiddos inside our walls and plan for the students and the families that will be joining us in the future, you know, on their brothers and their sisters and the babies that will be coming, you know, in through our doors and several years down the road. And also just remembering to support the individuality of everybody and what that means for education and what that means for what we need in our buildings. So.
Thanks, Tina.
You had mentioned the main priority for facilities and educational. I want to focus a little bit on educational. And the reason, what I hear from the teachers is they want to feel safe. That's number one, besides being able to teach our students, and I think that that's really important. So I think leveraging some type of additional safety features and things that we've been trying to focus on at the school is very important, not only for the teachers as in a building, but also in their classroom, I think is very important. And the next thing is the educational training for our teachers, and not only for that, but the emotional and social well-being so that they can provide that to our students. We've got a lot of things that have been put on our teachers for them to not only teach the specifics of reading, writing, and arithmetic, right, that we're all used to, but it's that social side that a lot of our students aren't getting at home. I think that that's become and has seen it very important. And so I think it's key for our teachers to be able to find ways to connect with those students. And that's how they become a lot of times your favorite teachers, you know, growing up. Facilities, I think many of us have heard about the air conditioning in the high school. That is one thing, but we also have to really plan for the future and doing some of the things that we need to do today so that in 20 and 30 years from now that we are also sustainable. So we have to be not only thinking about what can we do to fix the air conditioning, but how can we sustain that. It may not last the 30 years, but making sure that we can get to where we need to and be fiscally responsible too.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we're halfway through. This is question number 5 here. And real short one, start with you again, Dale, at the beginning. What is your opinion, perspective on class sizes?
I would have to say that in general, I think class sizes need to come down. I've had several people actually talking to me recently about their displeasure with class sizes at the middle school, and the idea that you can put 30+ students with one teacher and expect the teacher to be able to teach and the students be able to learn is a fallacy. Okay, so I think class sizes need to be very, very strongly controlled and smaller. I think smaller class sizes are extremely important for the learning process.
Okay, thanks. Lisa?
So I have 2 classes every day, my homeroom and another homeroom, and they each have just about 30 kiddos in them. And they can learn. I am teaching them, but it's very difficult. it's a lot of students. And by no fault, you know, of the school system, no fault of, there's only so much money to go around to hire staff. And I do believe that our school systems are doing the best that they can to provide the support to our educators, and you know, whatever that looks like for push in, pull out special ed services, to provide resources to our teachers. But I do think that now more than ever, it's a time to think outside the box and find different ways to support our educators in the classroom and families at home to make sure that the education that we're providing our students can be seen all the way through, and that parents can take over once they leave the walls of the school building. So, I mean, do I think class sizes should be smaller? Absolutely, but I am also realistic, and I know that it costs a lot of money to hire teachers and support services, and when you create smaller classrooms, that means you need more classrooms, which requires more buildings. And so, you know, we do the best with what we can, and that kind of goes back to taking care of our staff. And if they're being taken care of and they like being in the environment with each other and with their administrators, they'll do all right. We'll do all right.
Okay, thanks. Tina.
I remember with the school visits that we had just a little while ago as the Board of Education, sitting and reading to the students, and I do not remember the student's name. He came up to the teacher and said, he was going to throw up. And she was like, here, take the book. So then I began reading while she attended to the child. And that, one of the key things I think we really need to realize is somehow how we can get some support for the teachers, just additional support, even if it comes in the way of volunteering, a family member. Yes, we want to do background checks, but something like that, just for those little needs, or sometimes some of the bigger needs that you may have. We have a lot of people in our district who would be more than willing to volunteer and try to help the teachers out. But I think it's really finding a way that we can get the people in the classroom to help the teachers, and then that will also reduce some of the stress to where when we have the 30 members in the classroom and things like that.
Okay, thanks. Jason.
So obviously there's only one right answer. Classrooms should be smaller, you know, in terms of, you know, educator to pupil ratio. I'm sure there's statistics on exactly what the right number is, but fundamentally that sounds to me like a finance question, not necessarily a, you know, what should it be. The reality is, what can it be based on what you have today? Because there's a lot of great points brought up. Need more classrooms? That's going to require some infrastructure, okay? I think that was a very creative solution that was just offered around engaging the community. There's a lot of individuals that have lots of skills and experiences that maybe are retired or have some opportunity that potentially would be willing to assist or volunteer. Sounds like a great solution. Right up until the point that there's a liability issue, and that becomes a different problem. So, and I guess I'll just be very transparent. You know, my style and approach is pretty pragmatic. So, one, regardless of what the right size is, it is what it is today. And that's what we're dealing with. So we have to find a way to crack the nut based on what we're dealing with today. And I think evaluating any and every option, but understanding what the boundaries or parameters are, you know, to ensure that the community is protected, the educator is protected, and primarily the student is protected, you know, are certainly things that we should evaluate to position our students for success.
Okay, great, thanks. And keeping the focus again on K-12 education and in the classroom, what would you say is Harper Creek's greatest strength, and what area do you feel needs improvement most urgently? And that's Lisa, you're up first.
I was just thinking in my head, I hope I'm not up first. What is our greatest strength in our K-12 education?
And what do you think we should improve?
Oh, and improvement. Okay.
Kind of like a job interview, you know.
We really care about our staff, and the students that walk through our doors. I see it in the faces of the teachers that I interact with my own children in the school district, my 5 kiddos, and I see it when I watch Rob interact with our teachers and administrators and our other administrative staff. I believe that that is definitely one of our strengths. We care and we invest. We put our money where our mouth is, and we do that. Our improvement, I guess I would say that we can always do that better. And to do that, to care and invest and put our money where our mouth is a lot more difficult now, because there's no money to put where our mouth is. You know, everything's limited. So I think thinking outside the box in the ways that we get funding, or the way we provide the support to the people in our building. So, you know, empowering volunteers and people to do different things like our watchdog programs, empowering our parent-teacher associations to be a more, I don't want to say more useful, because that's not what I mean, but just to be in more and to have more power and to assist and do things like that. I think thinking outside the box is an area where we can improve.
Okay, thanks. Tina?
I'd say our teachers. That's number one with our strengths. I think about my kids when they come home. I hear about who they've interacted with and the questions that have come up. Just the other day, my senior came home and a teacher came 6:30 in the morning and met with him on his AP chemistry. I mean, that is what's key, and so they care. Our teachers care about our students, and you see it not only there, but also they're the same ones who want to coach. So they're not just coming here and leaving at the 2:45. They're also the same ones who want to see the students succeed in their extracurricular activities as well. They're the same ones who are coaching. The improvement, I would say that we could do better is a lot more of listening to our teachers. There's a lot of times to where our students know, or I'm sorry, our teachers know many times who's going to be in their classrooms. They know a lot of the parents. So I think a lot of that could be from really listening to them. If they feel somebody may be moving to the district or somebody may be moving out, based on what they know, I think we need to take that into a little bit of consideration and maybe plan a little bit better on that as we move towards our future.
Okay, thanks. Jason?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. What do you see as Harper Creek's, but focusing on K-12 education, not facilities, things like that, but what is Harper Creek's greatest strength, and what area do you think needs improvement most urgently? And that's K-12.
Well, I mean, I think in terms of greatest strength, I mean, just look around the community and the interaction. I've had some interaction at social events and sporting events, and generally speaking, I think it's a warm and attractive team of people that are very welcoming. So I mean, I think there's a lot of strong points to build on, from an educational standpoint. But I think what should we focus on? I think it's whether it's Harper Creek or Lakeview or any school district. Everyone's facing similar problems, by and large, because there's boundaries in terms of what will be educated. So I think, in my view, the focus needs to be on understanding today what's changing around the curve to ensure that we're positioning our kindergartners, who 18 years from now, the world will have changed completely. We need to be thinking more strategically about how we position children for success while dealing with all the peripheral items that you have to deal with from a budgetary, from a tactical standpoint. In my view, that was a failure 30 years ago, and we're dealing with the repercussions of it today.
Okay, thanks. Dale?
Well, I would have to say, excuse me, I'd have to say that I would agree with both Tina and Lisa that our greatest strength is in our educators. And I think that almost every teacher that I was exposed to in Harper Creek when our students were going through the program were really focused on our children's education. And so I think that, our teachers are our greatest strengths, and we need to support those teachers so that they do want to stay and continue educating the students of the future. As far as ways to improve education, I think we have to make education equitable for everyone. I think every student has specific needs, and while that may not be extremely possible to educate every student individually, I think we have to try and focus on each student's needs so that they do become, functional adults and can make, a living and make their life what they want it to be. So some students need technical support. Some students want to go into the trades. Some students want to go to college. And so I think we need to try and focus our education on helping those students make it in those areas that they want to pursue.
Okay, thanks. How should the money that we receive from the casino, and I checked with Carol Davis, and she says last year was about $2.6 million, best be allocated, and just for your knowledge, the current budget for the school is a little over $25 million. So what would you see, how would you divide it up, or where would you put some of that money towards? And Tina, you're up first.
Budgets, and it's so important. The money one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is the money that we get from the casino and where it puts us at. And I think that is something that we can improve on with the community, is sharing how that is being utilized in the future. And the biggest thing is, how do we allocate that? Really, we need to keep the school running day to day. That is number one. But also we have to set aside money for improvements. That is very important. Just like improving or approving the portion related to technology, for us to advance in the technology area. We approved a portion of that to go there. And the reason is, our students, we need to make sure that they remain competitive. As they graduate, we have students who are going into college who maybe some of them have never even touched a computer except for in their computer class. And that is it. They go home, they don't have a computer. So building that opportunity for them to do the day-to-day, what they need to do in school, and have a cooling system. So I've had friends who called me that week, and were like, my son came home with a migraine. When are we taking care of this? We have to have current improvements, but also be able to focus on the future and the future needs and planning. So,
okay, thanks. Jason.
You hit the question. I was thinking about her responses.
Oh,
we were going through.
That's okay. That's okay. How should the money we receive from the casino, and last year it was about $2.6 million, be best allocated? And again, just so you know that the school's budget is a little over $25 million.
Okay, well, how to allocate it? Go back to the point, budget's a budget. Set your priorities, allocate your funding based on what your priorities are. When you run out of money, step back and start making the tough decisions, okay? That's how I would allocate it. Now, clearly I haven't been exposed to all the details, and I'm sure I've looked at the budget, actually taken and exported it into an Excel spreadsheet, and actually ran some analytics on the budget just to understand what the run rates are. So there's probably some opportunity, which will require a decision that I'm sure somewhere out there someone won't like. But again, if we're going to set the priorities, which I think the school board and the educators collectively have done a great job setting the right focus. The key is making sure that you stay steadfast in your values, regardless of what you're talking about when it comes to understanding how to allocate the funding. To the point about the cooling system, hey, I get it. I don't like it hot. I grew up in the South. That's part of the reason I like Michigan, okay, a lot. But fundamentally, the understanding how the cooling system works and the infrastructure of the building, there's probably some expectations around what it's expected to do that technically are not possible. So there might be some understanding or education around that relative to how it's supposed to function. You can set one and it'll be there 30 years from now if it's properly PM'd.
Okay. Thanks. Dale.
Well, with a $26 million budget and a $2.6 million fund that we get approximately 2.6 million every year, so that's 10% of our budget, okay? I can also look at the casino money as a windfall, but I can also think that since we have this $2.6 million, let's allocate it in ways that will benefit us for the future, because I mean, it's very unlikely that the casino money is ever going away, but at the same time, we can't absolutely depend on it. So I know currently, if I understand the budget process approximately right, about 75% of the casino money goes into the general fund, and they just allocated, they split the 25%, or 12.5% went to future needs, and the other 12.5% went to like a savings account, if I got that correctly. I would like to see that savings portion of the casino money be capped off eventually, and not just keep adding to it on an indefinite basis. So, I can see using the money, the 70%, 69%, 75%, whatever it is, going into the general fund. I would like to see that helping, the education of our students, whether that means hiring more teachers or more computers for the students, whatever it would require, but I would like to see that part of the money be used for that. And then if we are saving some in future needs monies, I would like to see that eventually be, if we have $5 million tucked away somewhere, why keep growing it?
Okay, thanks. Lisa?
So how do I think the casino money should be allocated? We do set aside a portion of it for savings, but it's for future needs. So it is planned for, like, we do spend it on specific things. The 75% is used, to hire staff and for the things that we need for the day-to-day operations. I don't have anything specific in mind for how we should spend it. I just think the basic general answer with any dollar that comes into our pocketbook is to use it responsibly and to make sure that we're forward thinking and that we're taking care of, the people inside our walls and in our community.
Okay, thanks. I'll just have to...
I do think it's important to understand that the casino money, it's not something that is just, we are truly blessed to receive those funds, truly. But it brings us on a level playing field with the other school districts. So it's not like it gives us an extra, so if everybody had a $20 million budget to start with, it doesn't give us 22. Like, it brings us up to the 20 that everybody else has. And so I think it's important that everybody understands that too. Thank you, sorry.
Okay, the second one, Jason, you'll be first. And what would you do as a board member to inform and involve community members who do not have children who attend the school? So how can we involve them too?
Well, I think that's a great question. I mean, obviously, the only way to involve community members that don't have children, perhaps in the school district, is through different outreach programs, through different being present in the community and being available to ask questions, answer questions. And I think going back to an earlier comment, finding those individuals that maybe are empty nesters or don't have children, and seeing if there's ways to engage them in the educational process and maybe solve some of the other problems. That would be off the cuff. That would likely be one of the, avenues that I might propose. Fundamentally, I think people that want to be involved get involved, and individuals that don't want to be involved likely aren't going to be involved. So I think, again, step back and understand do the programs exist to appropriately engage those individuals and maybe their skill sets, and allow them to give back to the community and ensure that happens.
Okay, thanks. Dale?
Well, I really think community outreach is important, and involving the different townships that we as Harper Creek schools come in contact with, I think it would be a good idea for school board members to go out to the township meetings and, you know, educate the different townships as to what Harper Creek schools do and how we are, you know, being fiscally responsible with their money. I noticed, actually looking at the Harper Creek website recently, that Marshall Township isn't even listed as being part of Harper Creek schools. And they have no, you know, you can click on Little Roy Township and Emmett Township and Newton Township. There's no Marshall Township whatsoever. And when I've talked to people, oh, you live in Marshall Township? I thought you went to Harper Creek. I said, we do. We always have. Harper Creek goes all the way that way, you know. So I think a lot of people don't even know where the school boundaries are, much less, you know, how they're involved in the community.
Lisa?
I think that informing people, we miss the boat when we don't utilize social media and you know, apps and things like that. There's so many different ways that we can connect with our community members that have children, but also that do not have children. I have, you know, a bunch of, you know, 80-year-old women that go to our church and that we're really good friends with, and they have Instagram accounts. So I think that it's you know, a unique way to inform and involve and help them be in the know, because if we're not intentional about connecting with those people, then we're intentionally avoiding that conversation, because this is the world right now, social media and things like that. And I do think that we are on the right track as a board and as a school district. Our Board of Education just gave the okay for Mr. Ridgway to begin the process and to post a job for a communications director. And so I think that that's one definite plus of, or one way to communicate and to involve people, and to have somebody in charge of that will definitely help. And alongside of that, we have started discussion about a program called Communities in Schools, and that would involve having someone in our schools, in a lot of the schools in the community are looking at it, and having a, I can't remember what the official title is, but a program director that facilitates wraparound care, but also coordinates volunteers and brings people into our school building and filling the needs and the voids where we might need support or where our students need extra help.
Okay, thanks. Tina?
I think one of the things that we do miss the vote on is some of the communication piece, and that is why I did also approved along with Lisa for the communications director. I think it's very important for us to find different ways to communicate to the district. One of the ways that I personally do is I do volunteer at the Fredonia Grange, and those are the individuals that are the 80-year-olds who have maybe their own Facebook account. They may have Instagram too, but they do have their Facebook where they're asking questions on how do I see this or things like that. They're willing. You just have to give them the opportunity to try. Maybe that's another thing, is maybe hold a class here at the school that might help some of those individuals. I mean, just after school for somebody who may want to come in and learn a little bit more about that. I think the volunteering thing, I think it is important. We do have individuals who want to volunteer in this district, but they don't know how. If you ask those individuals, they will be the first to raise their hand or step in. They don't know who to ask. They don't know who to contact. So I feel it's very, very important for us to build in those opportunities. And that's our reach out point and a way to reach out to those individuals. They feel welcome. We want them to feel welcome in the school, the people who do not have children. And I think that's a key way that we can do that.
Okay, thanks. Starting with Dale, what experiences and qualities do you believe that you have that qualify you to be a member of the Board of Education?
Well, I think just having had 4 children pass through our school system and being exposed to the educational system that we have here, knowing its strengths and weaknesses over the years, has helped me understand the whole idea of school board. But I do have a lot of experience dealing with students, not dealing with parents, but dealing with students as young adults and what they have, brought to their educational background through their different schools. And so, I've been exposed to a lot of that, and I think that that is a really important component of educating our students and knowing, what they need to know to succeed in life.
Okay, thanks. Lisa?
I'm a school board member currently, so I think having the experience the last couple years of doing that and sitting in lots of meetings before that, learning. I'm an educator in another local school district, so I'm in the classroom. I know what's happening day in and day out, and I'm with a lot of the people in our community. I volunteer regularly in the school district because I have 5 children, 4 of which are currently in the system, but my 5th will be in kindergarten next year. And pretty soon I'll have somebody in every building in the district. So, or not every building, but you know what I mean, elementary, middle, high school. So just being involved and caring and being committed, I think, are probably some of my greatest attributes for this position.
Thanks. Tina?
For me, I'm a very deliberative person, so I try to really think about all possibilities before making a final decision, and I think that's important in everything that we look at for the school. I'm very fiscally responsible. I think that is key, and I think both of those go hand in hand, being deliberative and fiscally responsible. I just don't make decisions on a whim. I want to make sure that we're doing what's right for the school, and I will ask the appropriate I'll say, sometimes hard questions that people don't want to ask. And I'm okay with doing that. I'm okay with any type of pushback that I may receive with that, and I think that's important, that we are okay to communicate with those challenging discussions in our board, but also be respectful to each other and say it's okay to have our differences. And this is why I am elected, an elected official, is by those who have the same viewpoints as myself in order for me to represent you.
Okay, thanks. Jason?
So in terms of qualifications, if you will, so obviously a lot of great responses, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that could add a lot of value to a position of this nature. In terms of myself, I mean, I bring something very different perhaps to the board from I've seen a lot of things around the world. I've lived other places in the world and have managed budgets, large budgets, and have held regulatory fiduciary responsibility. So that said and done, I think there's a lot of people that could manage those aspects. The one thing that I bring that perhaps, and I'm sure there's others that have different perspectives, is actually seeing the application of that student as they either transition into college and from college out into the workplace, or the student into the workplace and then trying to take and help an individual actually be successful. And I'll be quite frank, just getting someone to be somewhere on time is a challenge, okay? It's pretty basic. Is that an educator's responsibility? I don't necessarily think that. I think we throw too much on the educators today. However, that's the society that we live in. Therefore, I think I can offer some different perspectives, maybe have a few skills to maybe solve a few problems, and can listen to what the community has to say and see if we can't find the right path forward.
Okay, thanks. How are we doing on time here? Okay, we're doing pretty good. My last question, this is the 10th one. And this actually came from the students, because I tried to ask every constituency I could think of, and then we will have time tonight for questions from the audience. So if you have a chance, after you listen to these responses, we'll take a little break, and if you ever want to write a question on the card, and then I think we'll have time for questions from you, because you've all been super patient on 10 of them, I'm sure. but I think you guys will enjoy this one. But get your pencils, and you have to write some down. I have to take some notes here. So this last question has come, it's from me, but the content's from the Harper Creek High School students. And I had asked a student that's on our student council to talk to his friends and talk to the student senate or student council and write down topics that are concerning to them. And so I'm going to give them, they gave me 7 topics. I'm going to have you write them down. And what you're going to be thinking about is that you're going to choose one of these 7. And if the students go through the proper channels, they're not going, obviously it's not correct for them to come to you. They would have to go through their student council and then go to their building administrator. And if the building administrator, you're going to get to pick one, said, I support the student position on this, which one is one that you would most likely be willing to hear? It's kind of like you're the Supreme Court and they're coming to you with these topics. So let me give you the 7 topics. Just write down a little code for yourself. The first one is the dress code. Some of them are not happy about they can't let their shoulders show or they can't wear athletic shorts. I don't know what their problem is, but whatever, that's one. Okay, and obviously this is something that Debbie Look in class of 74, when I was in high school, we had open lunch, but that was, in the Detroit area. So a lot of the kids would love to have open lunch. They're concerned about their access to technology. A student, and I don't know how many this was, they want to know why can't they have a service dog here at school. So that was one of their concerns. And a student, this is amazing to me, they are also concerned about the HVAC system. I thought that was interesting, but they're the ones that were sweating that first week of school. A student is also concerned, and I don't know how many of this is, but they do not have access to their backpacks because of, an adult, we're looking at it from safety concern, but they, their backpacks are their lives. I think you know that. And then recent policy was introduced about the kids wearing the lanyards with their name things on it. Some of the kids have heartburn about that.
They don't want to wear them.
They don't want to, trust me. So what I just want you to do, I'll give you time to think about it, but again, the premise is that they've gone through the proper channels. They've gone through their student government, they've come to the building administrator, and whatever issue is. So what would be the one that you would think, yep, we can hear your position and listen and maybe work with you or whatever. And Lisa, you're going to get to go first on this one, sorry, but there you go.
I would listen to them on any of these, honestly. But I do believe that probably I'm feeling brave. So I would probably say that the dress code is something that I would go with. I don't have all the right language to explain why, so bear with me. I do believe that by saying like girls can't wear spaghetti straps or you have to hold your arms down in your shorts, that it's very, it's more, my arms are really long. I would have to wear really long shorts, things like that. And also making sure that the ownership for whatever comes along with dress codes, like why are we saying girls can't wear short shorts? And generally speaking, it goes along with because then boys will look at them. And so are we having the proper conversation, with the boys in our district? Is society having those difficult conversations? So I am not going any deeper than that, but but I think that is definitely an important conversation to have.
Okay, thanks. Tina?
And I will agree with you that I would listen to all of them as well, and I will definitely pick one. I'm having a hard choice, though, between why the service dog and access to backpacks, so I'm going to go with the access to backpacks. Was it that you said that they didn't have access, or that they did?
They're not supposed to. They have to leave them.
Okay.
Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, if they have to leave them outside the classrooms and things like that. I've seen
In their
that
lockers.
sometimes. In their lockers, because sometimes, maybe it's fifth block, I've seen piled outside the doorway sometimes.
Some fifth block or during with choir, but otherwise backpacks need to be in their lockers.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the biggest things for me is my student, one of them, my oldest, would always carry his with him. I understand that we have safety issues, but I think it's important for people to feel comfortable with their backpacks. Sometimes for them, it's the ease of access to get into either their colored pens, pencils. Some of them are very organized individuals who carry 20, colors, and, everything is sorted specifically. And for them, that is also their comfort. I think it's important to listen to every student in that aspect and understanding their needs and the reason why they want to have it with them. Some just want to have it because maybe they throw some things that they're not supposed to have in it. That could be. But I think it's really important for students to be able to access the things that they need to at any given point, whether it be the 3 or 4 books. If they have 20 minutes of free time in the class, they want to do homework for another class, they can reach into their backpack and get it. So I think it's important to definitely hear both sides. I understand the safety side of it as well.
Okay, thanks. Jason?
Well, I mean, clearly people want to be heard, and certainly students want to be heard. I listen to things every day, all day long, basically, my view is, sure, I'll listen to what you have to say. You might not like the answer, but I'll shoot you straight. So picking one, I think I would pick the HVAC or cooling tower and maybe take it as an opportunity to educate. Maybe even expand it into the technology and show this is where you go to find the information.
Okay, great, thanks. Dale?
Well, I can see where they would have interest in all of the topics. I mean, these are pretty typical teenage, don't throw too many rules at me.
Right.
I don't want to do that. I mean, we were talking dress code when I was in high school, and that was 50 years ago.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, everything old is new again.
Exactly. So if I was going to pick one, I think I'm going to say access to tech. And I think when they're saying access to tech, they're saying phones, iPads, whatever they want to play with. And I can see where this generation is just, they can't live without their technology. And I'd be perfectly willing to listen. The problem with technology is that when you have it and you're trying to teach somebody, they're all sitting at the back of the room ordering things on Amazon with their phones. And so that is a definite issue for me. But I could see talking about access to technology with them and trying to explain why it is not possible to have everybody have their phone in class and expect them to learn anything at all. Because I dealt with that in college. Very short. When I first started teaching, one of my mentors came in to monitor my class and see how I was doing, and she sat at the back of the class, and there were, students in the back of the class, and she came down to me at the end of the class and she said, that whole back row was on a different, was on their iPads watching something else. I said, really? She said, yes. So I started wandering the room during my lecture and found out that, yes, indeed, they weren't taking notes after all. Surprise, surprise.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's everybody take a stretch here. I think I have a couple here. So just water stretch.
Volunteering or anything,
so Tina's going first this time. Okay, so Tina's
Great.
is on the hot seat first here. Okay. Then let me write this down so I can keep straight. Okay, so starting with Tina, and Rachel, you ready to go?
I am.
It says, what are your views on privatization of support staff, especially transportation? I mean, in the past we did privatize the custodial services, but I think this is focused on transportation. Does that come up in discussions, or what are your views on it?
So specific on transportation, or as on transportation? That's a great question, and I know one of the things that I really asked Rob to prepare, but that was more for the facility side, was understanding what is the percentage of that we utilize as a support staff that we may outsource, I'll say, instead of privatization, but versus keeping in-house. I think it's very important that with the funding that we have within this district, that we really look at ways that we can continue to save money. I know I did see a comment related to some of that on Facebook that, well, let's keep it within the district. Many of those employees that we are still hiring, whether it be privatized or not, are living within this district. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. We still want to keep those individuals that care about our school and hire the right individuals, but we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs as a whole for the district.
Okay, thanks. Jason?
So privatizing or outsourcing, okay, do I like it? Simple answer is no. Personally, I don't. I like people to be part of the team, feel like they're on the team, and I think anytime that you have to make that decision, and quite candidly, I've made a lot of those decisions throughout my career, and may make some this week. However, bottom line is, it goes back to when you only have so much to work with, you have to step back and understand, back to your core value. How are you going to educate? How are you going to ensure that you can appropriately educate the students, and then based on that, what choices? You're going to have a group of choices to make, and sometimes it's pick a choice. That's obviously one that across the world, people make that choice every day. I'll give you a real simple analogy. My guess is many people in the room drink milk. Some maybe had cereal this morning, maybe drink milk. My guess is maybe there's one that has a cow. Again, very pragmatic. If you don't have a cow and you drink milk, you outsourced it. It's as simple as that. So you made a choice, probably for a lot of right reasons. So primarily, there'll be difficult choices. It's a sourcing choice, bottom line.
Okay, thanks. Dale?
Well, I think this is a topic that has come up not only with, transportation, but the custodial staff, and you hear it on the news a lot. And I do think that privatization has a lot of good points to it, but if you look at long term, I think privatization tends to not serve the needs of the company that they're working for. They don't have the attachment to the business if it's outsourced. And so I think that privatization for transportation, may sound good, but I don't think it's a good idea.
Lisa?
I think that we need to be fiscally responsible with the money that our community has entrusted to us. However that looks, whether we decide to outsource or not outsource, there's a give and take with the money that's left over. I shouldn't say leftover. Whether we spend it on outsourcing or whether we spend it on something else, we need to be responsible. And whether we outsource our transportation or our custodial staff or we don't, we should be proactive and be making sure that the people that are hired and are in our buildings and are seeing the faces of our children and our staff every day know that they're cared about and know that they are a part of something bigger than changing trash bags out of a garbage can. That they are providing a service that is necessary to properly educate the kiddos in our buildings. Because with garbage cans full, teachers can't teach, students can't learn. With bus drivers that aren't cared for or don't feel like they're part of the bigger picture, that will translate into not as great of a relationship between bus drivers and the students that they are the very first face that they see in the morning when they come to school. So no matter how we spend that money, no matter who we hire, they need to know that they're part of a bigger picture.
Thanks. Okay, this next one, Jason, you'll be going first. And this audience member feels that what you're doing is you're applying for a job. This is like a job interview. And so describe what you see as your duties.
I think that's a very good question. I mean, obviously, it's a public office, and with a public office, there's roles and responsibilities that are very clearly spelled out. What I personally view, so I know and understand or can educate myself from a legal perspective. That being said, what do I feel like my duties are? You know, one, make sure that we educate our students today to make tomorrow better. Why? Quite honestly, pretty selfishly. I'd like to retire. I kind of like living in this area, and I would like to ensure that tomorrow is at least as good as today, hopefully better, okay? And I could say primarily that's a pretty selfish reason, because I'm hoping things get better. Two, making sure from a fiduciary standpoint that the taxpayers' money is spent appropriately. And I guess three, kind of making sure that the individuals that we have recruited and in charge with educating our children are well cared for. And that we're trying to position the superintendent and the district staff to be successful. I mean, that's one of the main things I view as a primary role or responsibility, is let the educators educate, okay? Manage the budgets, and then ensure that that team is positioned to do what they're compensated to do.
Sure. Thanks. Dale?
Well, I think first and foremost, my duty as a board member would be to make sure that students in our district are educated for the future, because things are changing so rapidly that you know, what we're teaching now is not going to be applicable in 5 years from now. You know, so we need to educate our students for a world that is changing, the globalized economy that they're going to be subjected to, and in a very short period of time. So I think education is number one. I would have to agree with Jason that fiscal responsibility is got to be number two. We have to live within our means. After being a business owner for nearly 40 years and running a small business in a small community, if you do not, you know, keep to your budget, you're going to fail. And so I think fiscal responsibility is extremely important. So we have a $26 million plus or minus budget. We can't spend $30 million and expect to sustain any kind of educational system. And lastly, I think teacher support, you know, whether that means additional help in the classroom through volunteers or more income, because everybody wants more income, in order for them to be successful and feel supported. You know, continuing education for our educators so that they can, you know, continue to educate our students in the future.
Okay, thanks. Lisa?
I think that my duties as a school board member, number one, so I kind of feel like this was an inquirer question, but so it's very similar. My biggest job, my only job, is to keep that guy in line, and to make sure that
Pointing at Carol's
I'm pointing at Mr. Ridgway. I'm pointing at Mr. Ridgway. Carol's husband too, because we need Carol to come to work and do a good job. Is to make sure that Rob is doing his job. And Rob has a big, big job. And we have a big, big job as school board members to oversee the policy and, you know, to ask difficult questions and to sometimes ask to make sure that we're understanding things that we might not understand. And that's hard to do in front of a lot of people and at a board table, but it's absolutely necessary. And then to make sure I'm listening to the community and speaking for the people that have elected me and speaking for the students that don't have any idea who I am, but know that I'm a warrior for them and their education. And then empowering, outside of obviously supporting and holding a fire to Rob all the time, but also empowering him and doing what I can to make sure that he succeeds and to make sure that he's cared for and to make sure that he is empowering all of the people that are underneath him, you know, in the structure of the schools. So the teachers, the parapros, everybody, to make sure that he's cared for so that he can care for everybody in our buildings.
Thanks. Tina?
I'd say number one is I represent the individuals who vote for me and elect me. My job is to attend the school board with all of that in mind, listen to individuals, and then bring that into Rob as we move forward and set the policies. I think that is key as we begin, as any job, right? You want to do that. I do that day to day. Also, one of the things is if it's to assist Rob making sure he is supported. So if Rob doesn't come in, every day saying, I can do all things, even though we kind of put that on you a little, Rob. But the thing is, he tries. And so I think that is important that we support him. If he says, here's what I'm seeing and I need help and support in this area, that it's our job to provide him that support.
Okay, thanks. This next one, Dale, you kind of alluded to it in your previous answer just now. And this person says, and throughout the night, you've all said that you support teachers. This person would like some specific examples. And it starts with you again, Dale, but you, again, like I said, you mentioned some of these in your previous answer.
So specific examples of teacher support? Okay. I think if we're going to have any kind of education that allows our students to learn, is we do have to support our teachers both financially and emotionally. Okay, and so if there's issues with fiscal problems within the school system, as board members, I think we need to support our teachers. They need more money, they need more classroom supplies, they need more smaller classrooms. I think we need to talk to them, see where we can work things out within our financial abilities and go from there.
Okay, thanks. Lisa?
I think that how we specifically as a board member would support teachers. Okay, so I feel like I bring a unique perspective to the table in that I am a teacher, and that allows me to listen and to understand with a truly, I can put myself in your shoes ear. I know where you're coming from. I know what your frustrations are, and then bring that perspective of the board, if it's something that they're struggling with, being able to, explain that with them. But I think our school district in general can just be a good listening ear. I know that Rob does a good job of this with donuts. He goes to schools in the mornings and will offer donuts and listen. And I think school board members could do the same sort of thing in a different environment, and I think that we should. And to make sure that people not only are, I'm not just listening to you, but I'm truly hearing you and listening what your concerns and feelings are in the school district. And also, Dr. Borders alluded to salaries and whatnot, and I do feel like that always has to be on the forefront, and I understand the struggles of there's only so much money to go around. But I do think that our finance director, Carol, and Mr. Ridgway and everybody does a very good job of trying to make sure that our staff is appropriately cared for in those financial means, and also taking great care of their emotional needs.
Thanks. Tina?
I think one of the key things that I've heard is, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, was safety. And that is why we as a board approved the additional resource officer. I think that is key. That is how I'll say I am supporting a lot of our teachers. And one of the lunches that I went to, just listening to some of the teachers and some of the emotional support that they're trying to give some of the students, that is one of the key things I would say is next, is besides feeling safe, is how that the teachers can provide that emotional support. We find today that a lot of teachers And one of my biggest questions is, how can we get this additional money out of nowhere, right? We find a lot of teachers and everybody else is doing this through grants. So how can we make sure that we can do as much as what we can for our teachers, the school district, to get additional grants into this district and be first in order, you know, to provide that additional funding? I think that's key.
Okay, thanks. Jason?
So just for clarification, you're asking what have or what will?
Well, because you haven't been
Or
elected
both.
to the board yet,
Oh,
it's
that's
just how do you visualize in the future that
okay.
you could?
Fair point.
Support the
So
teachers.
I would say over the years, in the different areas that I've lived, I've done a lot to partner with educators at all different levels for many different reasons. You know, a lot of it through you know, just organizational volunteerism and trying to really connect industry with education primarily. I mean, that was primarily the intent. So in terms of what would I do from a board position, my view is if my phone rings, there's a high likelihood I'm going to answer it. You know, likely 24 hours a day or near 24 hours a day. So one, I would be available to listen and I'll respond. I'm not saying I'll have all the answers in terms of the financial aspect or from a compensatory standpoint. I think that's kind of hammered out, and so I would say, okay, I can listen, but there may not be a lot I can do. So the key would be, can I hear your problem, and are there solutions that maybe we could propose, or brainstorming? That would be, in my view, one of the things that potentially with my background, just listen and say, hey, here's some ideas. Let's see what we can do with it.
Okay, thanks. I was at the last board meeting, just so I could talk about this process with you guys, and you did have a lengthy discussion about Waddles Park Men's Club, and then I saw this week that there was an article on the front page of the paper again. And so this community member is concerned or is asking about, what do you see as the relationship between the men's club and Harper Creek Community Schools? And Lisa, you're up first. I hope I worded that okay for the community member.
I think that Waddles Park Men's Club has a wonderful relationship with all of the school districts in our community. They serve so many students throughout the community through their sporting teams and activities and events. I think that many feel that Harper Creek has a unique relationship with them because they've had space in buildings of ours. They have the property behind Waddles Park. They don't have it. They utilize the property behind Waddles Park Elementary School, and so that definitely is unique, but I do think it's important to remember that they serve a lot of people in our community. So I think it's an opportunity for our district to definitely be a part of something bigger than us and to be providing athletics and activities for families in such a unique way. They provide so much financial support, and it's a unique organization that connects a lot of different people. So I think it's a great program to be working with.
Okay, thanks. Tina?
I see it as just that, a partnership. Waddles Park Men's Club, I coached there. My kids went there. I coached basketball. It wasn't specific to Harper Creek, and I think that is a key thing to remember, is it is to help all those students who may not make a travel team or make anything else, but equal playing time for all of the kids. That is one of the key things I remember from coaching there, and I thought that was very important, and I did stand behind that, and Gary Lincoln did stand behind that as well. I think as we look forward is really looking at that partnership, and I'll step into probably nowhere where I shouldn't be, but it's just like the property next door. One of the questions that came to me was, well, does this have to deal with Waddles Park? Absolutely not. When a decision was made to put an offer on that property, it is for the future of the school, and that is it. Thinking about the school, Waddles Park Men's Club is just that. It is separate from Harper Creek, but we are a partnership in trying to benefit our students and also all of the students within the Battle Creek district. And I think that's an important thing.
Thanks. Jason?
So to respond to that, first and foremost, I would say I'd like to better understand what the relationship is based on the question. So inherently, I've lived here 10 years, it's not crossed my mind. However, based on the population, it sounds like perhaps there might be a question. So I think first I would say, hey, I need to kind of understand what the situation is and what the boundaries are. In my experience, there's always many perspectives, sometimes 3 and 4 sides of a perspective. And the key would be ensuring that the appropriate information, one, are the rules, laws, regulatory things being followed. Yeah, it's a yes or no question. They either are or they aren't. Outside of that, then it's maybe helping clear whatever the perspective is, provided that those things are being followed. And I've been educated by the last 2 responses, which kind of gave me a different perspective.
Okay, thanks. And Dale?
Please repeat that, or would you repeat that, please?
Basically, they're curious about, or they want some clarification on what your position would be with the relationship between the men's club and the school system.
Okay. Well, I know that Wild's Park Men's Club has been in existence for a very long time. I think it's somewhere in the 60-year range now. And approximately, from what I understand it, approximately 75% of the students that are served by Wild's Park Men's Club are Harper Creek students. Okay, so I think the vast majority of the Wild's Park student athletic population is Harper Creek. Okay, I also know that a lot of the kids that work as coaches and work in the concession stand are Harper Creek students because they have had a long-term relationship with Wild's Park Men's Club. So I've always been very supportive of Wild's Park Men's Club. Our kids all did soccer and indoor soccer and hockey and all the other things. And so, I think that we have a long-term relationship with Wild's Park Men's Club. I support the relationship that we've had, and whether or not, the issue of what's coming forward has to be looked at, in that long-term relationship, and whether it will benefit both Wild's Park Men's Club and Harper Creek schools.
Okay, thanks. And you'll all be glad to know that this is the last question. Okay? And I'm going to read this one. I feel I'm just going to read it right as the way the person wrote it because I'm not privy to a lot of information about this, but I know this district's been discussing it. It says, how do you see, and Tina, you'll be going first, how do you see the $26 million bond proposal future here at Harper Creek?
Can you say that again?
How do you see the $26 million bond proposal's future?
Oh, how do I see the future of it? Is it how it's being utilized, or?
Well, I don't know if the person in the audience is willing to clarify that, or if they're going to allow me to. They might, yeah. I think,
okay.
I think what they could be, one of the things they might be thinking about is, does it have a chance of passing? What do they think? What is your opinion?
Okay.
And then again, what is the money going to be used for? I mean, I think
okay.
that could be.
Okay. That's fine. I can try to try to accomplish both of those. So how about that?
Maybe that's 2 perspectives on it.
Okay. I think first and foremost, before we look at the ability for approving, we need to communicate it more. One of the things for me personally, getting on this board and being appointed, that was my number 1 question also, and I'm sure it is for a lot of taxpayers, is where's the PILT money going? What's happening? Now that I've been on the board, I'm understanding a lot more of what's happening with that. And so the next thing we have to move forward is how can we improve this district with the money that we have? We've done what we can, as a school board, but there does come a point to where the buildings need to be improved. We have in many cases, we've got a lot of students that may need some additional classwork, classrooms or things like that. And what would we really want to use it for? We've got middle school, for example, if we look at the pool, That's a large area that's not even being utilized. It's just sitting there. What's the potential that we could do for that room, and expand upon that a little bit more? What can we do with some of these elementaries to improve in some of those? I mean, I hate to go back to the HVAC thing, but when I see some teachers going and purchasing air conditioners, mind you, this wasn't for Harper Creek, but this was not a Harper Creek teacher. However, this is happening in some other schools too, to where they're buying those small air conditioner units that are for their room. That shouldn't have to happen in order for our students to feel comfortable. This is a piece of that. We want to improve the students and their future, and also make it nice for our teachers, make it okay for our teachers to teach.
Jason.
So, relative to the bond proposal, so one, the last time I asked someone for $26 million or whatever the proposal would be, I had a lot of explaining to do and basically had to sign up for, this is what your return on investment is going to be. So first, I would say, well, there probably should be a little bit of line item, maybe communication around, hey, here's where the money's going, number one. I think that's just good, being responsible. With that said, obviously it hasn't been proposed yet, so that would tell me that the current board membership and individuals involved are really stepping back and thinking through what is the right path forward. Now, the one bit of public information that that was published, being able to maybe capture students at the preschool level, whatever age that is, I would say I think that's a really good idea and probably a good place to spend money. Maybe the cooling tower is a place, I really don't like to be hot, okay? So I'm just going to be candid. So, and I cannot lie. I have trouble focusing to start with. I cannot focus when I'm hot. If that's a problem, we need to solve that problem. Whether it's a bond that solves the problem, or we roll up our sleeves and dig in and figure out, is there another way to solve that problem? But I'm here to tell you, that would be one that would be on my radar, okay? The preschool, and I think that's a great idea, because society's changed, and unfortunately, we're asking things from our educators that, maybe quite frankly should be handled somewhere else. But it is what it is, so if we can fix it and make the world a better place, I think that's a great place to spend the money.
Thanks, Dale.
Well, of course, everybody wants more money all the time, but as a taxpayer, we only have so many dollars that we can spend as well, okay? So I think fiscal responsibility for our tax base has to be a priority. I mean, there are only so many people that are paying property taxes to the school, and if they're going to float a new bond issue to do whatever, I think if we can explain where the money is going, what it's going to be used for, what the expected outcomes are, what the benefits for the students are going to be, then I think people will be on board for it. But, you can't just throw out a proposal to, we need $20 million to fix our roads. Okay, we just had that in Marshall Township in the summer, and they wanted to tax all the property owners in Marshall Township. I estimated it would cost me and my family approximately $1,000 more a year in property taxes just to fix about a dozen roads in Marshall Township. I said, no. So we have to, explain to the tax base what the money is going for, what we need it to do, and how we think it's going to proceed.
Okay, thanks. And Lisa.
How do I see its future? So first of all, I think what Jason said is spot on, that this is not actually a bond that's going to the voters right now. The board is in the process of seeking input and seeing if this is something that the community would support. We did have a group of people called the FIT team that did a lot of work for a very long time and worked very hard to gather information about what was needed in our district's buildings and whatnot. gathered financial information for that. So I think it's important to process through that, have that group involved, utilize the survey that we've put together, and then honestly, like if it can go through all the proper channels, and if people like the way it sounds, if our community likes the way it sounds, if our educators can get behind it, if we as a board can get behind it, and we've communicated it clearly, and people understand what we're asking for and what the impact would be, then I sure hope it passes, because we've gone through all the proper the proper channels, and we've put some well-intentioned thought and time and money behind it, and it would be something that we're putting on the ballot to better our district and to better the education of the students in our district.
Thanks. First of all, well, let's give our candidates a nice round of applause here. And again, thanks Mike for taping, thanks Rachel for timing, thanks Sharon for organizing everything. And make sure everybody drives safe tonight, and please vote on November 6th, and tell everybody you know to vote. Okay? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.